Welcome to the Daily Current Affairs by Civics and IAS, where we shall discuss the top 10 important topics for the UPSC CSE Prelims from the Hindu, the Indian Express and the PIB. So the first article here says that US President Donald Trump criticized the high tariffs charged by India and other countries, terming them as very unfair, and announced reciprocal tariffs from April 2nd on nations that impose levies on American goods. So in this context, we'll talk about the relevant aspects. But before that, what are these tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers? See, these tariffs are nothing but a tax or a duty that are imposed by a government on the imported or exported goods. But why is this done? So this is done to regulate the trade, generate the revenue, and also protect the domestic industries from exploitation. Right. Now, what are the non-tariff trade barriers? See, these are the trade restrictions imposed by a country without using direct taxation. So, these barriers control the volume, quality, and conditions of the trade. Now, what is the current context of the issue? If you have to look at the current context, so on March 4th, what happened? US President Donald Trump addressed a joint session of Congress, marking the first major speech of his second term. So in this, he announced a new tariff policy. Emphasizing the reciprocal tariffs against the countries imposing high trade barriers on the US, including India, China, European Union, and Canada and Mexico. So on these countries, he announced reciprocal tariffs. Know that the tariffs are set to take effect from 2nd April 2025. So if we have to look at the key announcements, firstly, as I said, US will impose the reciprocal tariffs matching the rates of other countries which imposed tariffs on US. And the countries with significantly higher tariffs on US imports will proportionately face the retaliatory tariffs that is there. Now, what is the India's position in the US trade policy? See, India is described as the tariff king. India is described as the tariff king of the US with high import duties on US products. So, the President Trump highlighted India's high auto tariffs, which are over 100%, and he told it as an example of unfair trade practices. So if we have to look at the key trade between India and US, see, the combined value of the goods traded between US and India was approximately $129.2 billion. If you have to look at the United States exports to India, the US exported goods worth $41.8 billion to India, marking a 3.4% increase, approximately, which amounts to $1.4 billion from 2023. So if you have to look at the US imports from India, so the United States imported goods totaling $87.4 billion, which reflects a 4.5% increase, compared to 2023. Now, with respect to trade balance, the US goods trade deficit with India stood at $45.7 billion in the year 2024, which is a 5.4% increase, over the previous year, which is 2023. Now, moving forward, the second article here says that 5 years after the government introduced the fresh guidelines to elevate the flagship Eklavya Model Residential Schools. Eklavya Model Residential Schools, in short called the EMRS. So, for the tribal children to the standards of Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas by centralizing their administration, among other measures, latest progress has been made with respect to it. So, in this context, we'll talk about the Eklavya Model Residential Schools, and then we'll talk about the differences with the other schemes. Okay. So, what was this scheme all about? See, the Eklavya Model Residential Schools, as I said, in short called the EMRS, are launched. This scheme is launched in the year 1997-98 to provide quality education to scheduled tribes children in the remote areas. You have to remember this point. This is very important for the exam. So you have to know that the students of all the schools should cater to the students from class 6 to class 10 with a capacity of 480 students per school, which equals the number of boys and girls. Furthermore, you have to know that the Ministry of Tribal Affairs is the ministry which implements this central sector scheme. And significantly, this is originally funded under Article 275 Clause 1 of the Indian Constitution. Now, if you have to look at the key features, see, the target here is by 2026 is to establish 728 Eklavya model residential schools across India. So, as of July 2024, 708 EMRS are sanctioned, or 405 schools are functional. 405 schools are functional. Right. Now, what is the eligibility criteria for the establishment of the schools? So, the blocks with more than 50% of the ST population and with at least 20,000 tribal persons according to 2011 census are eligible to, establish the schools, are eligible to get established those schools. Furthermore, you can observe the integration of technology and skill development in this scheme, where CBSE curriculum is followed uniformly across all the schools, and also smart boards and DTH based learning was introduced, online tutoring was introduced with respect to competitive exams, and also skill development programs for the employability of these students is given. And there is a new component under this, which is the Poshan Vatikas initiative, which is mainly schools will set up the Poshan Vatikas to preserve the local plant varieties, and they will enhance the knowledge of medicinal and nutritional plants. They will enhance the knowledge of medicinal and nutritional plants from the Poshan Vatikas, which are the Nutrition Gardens initiative. Now, if you have to compare this EMRS with the Navodaya Vidyalayas and the Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas, so the differences are these. Firstly, the target beneficiaries with respect to EMRS are ST students, whereas the Navodaya Vidyalayas, meritorious rural students, whereas for the Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas, the eligible people or the target beneficiaries are girls from the disadvantaged groups. And for the managing authority for the EMRS is Ministry of Tribal Affairs, whereas for both of these schemes is the Ministry of Education. So this is all you have to know with respect to the Eklavya model residential schools. And as I have told just now, these have been, in 2020, new guidelines have been issued with respect to their implementation. Okay. Now, moving on to the third article. The third article says that amid claims by the opposition parties over anomalies in voter lists, the Election Commission has decided to deploy a unified information technology architecture. This is with a customized dashboard to facilitate different stakeholders and minimizing the human error. In this context, we'll just see what's the background of all this, and then we'll talk about it. See, recently the Election Commission has initiated a digital transformation to enhance the capacity building of electoral functionaries. So this initiative was discussed at a 2-day conference of the Chief Electoral Officers of all states and UTs at the IIIDEM of New Delhi on 5th March of 2025. So if you have to look at the key announcements and initiatives with respect to this meeting, firstly, they were planning to release animated videos, audiobooks and ebooks, where this will include the self-paced learning resources, for each of the 28 identified stakeholders. 28 stakeholders have been identified, and this 20 self-paced learning resources for each of the 28 identified stakeholders in the electoral process. And you have to know that these materials will cover all election related processes, making them easily accessible. Right, it is easily accessible. Now the second is the integrated IT dashboard for the stakeholders, where it includes a unified IT architecture with role-based access for different functionaries. And secondly, real-time input and output tracking to streamline the flow of information. And lastly, inbuilt cross-verification to minimize human errors and ensure accuracy. And third one, as I told, it's about the strengthening the CEO and DEO communication, where it includes quick response mechanisms to counter misinformation and address the local electoral issues. Furthermore, enhanced social media reach is used for continuous voter management. Now, what are the key legal and constitutional frameworks with respect to it? So, all these elector-related activities will follow the Representation of the People's Act of 1950 or 51. This is only in short called the RPA. Then the Registration of Electoral Rules of 1960, Conduct of Electoral Rules or the Election Rules of 1961, and also Election Commission of India's instructions issued periodically. So now if you look at the other topics which can be studied for the exam, which includes EPIC, which we recently discussed in the video, and then systematic voters education and electoral participation, voters services portal, accessible elections initiatives, and also electoral literacy clubs. These are the other initiatives taken by Election Commission of India. Fourth article here says that the Defense Research and Development Organization, which is the DRDO, has announced the successful high-altitude trial of an Indigenous Integrated Life Support System for the Light Combat Aircraft LCA Tejas. So, in this context, we'll talk about the onboard oxygen generating system based Integrated Life Support System. Okay, so what is this technology all about? See, the onboard oxygen generating system based integrated life support system is designed to generate and manage breathable oxygen for the aircrew during the flight, eliminating the need for traditional liquid oxygen cylinder based systems. So this is removing that requirement from it. Now, if you have to look at the key features of the system, firstly, the first feature is that it's, as I said, onboard oxygen generation can be observed, where it generates and also regulates the breathable oxygen for pilots in real time, and it eliminates the dependence on the traditional liquid oxygen cylinder based systems, right? And what are the performance and testing trial conditions? So the aircraft which was used was LCA Prototype Vehicle 3, which was developed by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited or the Aeronautical Department Agency, and this was tested under varied flight conditions like the altitudes up to 50,000 feet, high G forces and aerobatic maneuvers, functional testing of anti-G valve, breathing oxygen system, and emergency oxygen system. And significantly, the performance evaluation conducted after the flight clearance from the Center for Military Airworthiness and Certification. And with respect to engineers and industry collaboration, it is manufactured by the Larsen & Toubro L&T as development cum production partner, and 90% of these components are made in India, which will boost the self-reliance, in the aerospace technology, right? And there is potential for adaptations with respect to modification with respect to usage in the MiG-29K and other aircrafts. Now, if you have to briefly look at the LCA Tejas, so it is a 4.5 generation multi-role single engine light combat aircraft developed by HAL, which is nothing but the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, under the Aeronautical Development Agency under the Ministry of Defence. Significantly, it is India's first indigenously developed fighter jet designed to replace the MiG-21 aircraft. Know that it is developed under the LCA program. It was developed under the LCA program, which was initiated in the early 1980s. So this is all about the new technology, and we have seen briefly about the LCA Tejas. Right. Now moving forward to the next article, which says that the Union Cabinet on Wednesday announced or revised the Livestock Health and Disease Control Program. Livestock Health and Disease Control Program with a total outlay of 3,880 crore rupees and for the years 2024-25 and 2025-26. Know that this includes a provision of 75 crore to provide good quality and affordable generic veterinary medicine and incentive for the sale of medicines under the Pashu Aushadhi component. In this context, we will look at the different aspects of the revised Livestock Health and Disease Control Program, in short called the LHDCP. So on March 5th of 2025, the Union Cabinet chaired by Modi ji approved the revision of this program. So the revised scheme, as I said, it has a total outlay of 3,880 crores for the next 2 years, and a new component Pashu Aushadhi has been added to improve the access to affordable generic. Now, if you look at the key features, See, firstly, the scheme has three components. The first component is the National Animal Disease Control Program. The second component is the Livestock Health and Disease Control, where it includes the subcomponents like the Critical Animal Disease Control Program, establishment and strengthening of veterinary hospitals and mobile veterinary units, and also assistance to states for the control of animal diseases. And the third component, as I said, the newly added one was the Pashu Aushadhi, under which 75 crore rupees a provision for the distribution of good quality, affordable generic veterinary medicines is given. And also the medicines are available through PM Kisan Samriddhi Kendras and cooperative societies. Now, the scheme aims to prevent livestock diseases mainly, like the foot and mouth disease, brucellosis and all these diseases, which also includes the lumpy skin disease. And you have to know that the focus is on vaccination, disease surveillance and upgradation of the veterinary services. Now, what are the benefits we can observe with respect to the scheme? See, firstly, it will lead to livestock productivity enhancement by preventing disease-related losses. By preventing disease-related losses to boost the milk, meat and egg production. And secondly, it will lead to economic gains of farmers by reducing the financial losses from livestock mortality and disease outbreaks. And also it will encourage the rural entrepreneurship. Right, it will encourage the rural entrepreneurship. Right. Then it will also lead to improved health access, where the expansion of these access is done through mobile veterinary units for doorstep veterinary care and availability of affordable medicines via Pashu Aushadhi, which was the new component. Right. Now, it will also lead to employment and rural development, where it generates the jobs in veterinary services and also all the allied sectors related to it. So, this is all about the scheme, right? Now, the next article here says that the Reserve Bank of India has announced open market purchase. This only we call it as the open market operations, right? Open market purchase of government securities, in short called the GSECs, for 1 lakh crore rupees. For 1 lakh crore rupees. The move is followed by a review of current and evolving liquidity conditions, the banking regulator said. So, in this context, we'll first briefly touch upon the open market operations, and then we'll see what is about the government securities. See, the open market operations are when the RBI or the central bank buys and sells the government securities or GSECs in the open market. So, this is mainly done to regulate the money supply and or to control the money supply, to regulate the interest rates, and lastly to to manage the liquidity in the economy. Now, what are the government securities or GSECs? See, these GSECs in simple words are nothing but the debt instruments. These are debt instruments issued by the government of India or the state governments to finance their fiscal deficits. So, they are considered risk-free. Why are they considered risk-free? Because they carry the sovereign guarantee. The government is guaranteeing them, making them a secure investment option. Now, if you have to talk about the types of GSECs, there are two types. One are the T-bills and the other are the dated securities. So, now what is the difference between these two? See, these T-bills are nothing but they are the short-term securities. They are short-term securities with maturities like 14 days, 91 days, 182 days or 364 days. So, they are basically short-term and they are issued at a discounted or redeemed at a face value. Right. Now, what are the dated securities then? So, these will be the long-term securities with fixed or floating interest rate. With fixed or floating interest rates and maturities ranging from 1 year to 40 years. Okay. So, what is the difference? These are short term with this maturity, whereas these are long term with a maturity of 1 year to 40 years. Now, what is the issuance mechanism? See, very simple. GSECs are issued through auctions. They are issued through auctions conducted by RBI on behalf of the government. So, RBI conducts these auctions on behalf of the government, and these auctions also can be either competitive or non-competitive. Now, what happens in competitive things? In competitive bidding, participants specify the yield or price they are willing to accept, Whereas in the non-competitive bidding, they are primarily for the retail investors, allowing them to participate without specifying the yield or price, ensuring a proportionate allocation. Ensuring a proportionate allocation at the weighted average yield of successful bids. Then the G-Secs can be held in dematerialized form. In the accounts itself. With entities like RBI, depositories or banks. And if they can be traded also in the secondary market, providing liquidity to the investors. Now, like listening to all this, what do you think are the benefits of it? The first benefit, as we discussed already, they are risk-free because they carry the governments, they are backed by the governments and they carry that sovereignty, right? And secondly, you can say that it will give you fixed returns. It will give you fixed returns, which will ultimately offer predictable interest income, beneficial for long-term financial planning. And thirdly, they will be used to manage the liquidity. So, active secondary market allows easy buying and selling, and the liquidity can be adjusted very easily. But there are some recent developments with respect to the G-Secs. So, a scheme called the Retail Direct Scheme was introduced by the Reserve Bank, enabling individual investors to open retail direct gilt accounts and directly participate in the G-Secs market. And it is also done to democratize the access to government securities and to promote retail participation in such aspects. Okay. Now, moving on to the seventh article. It says that the Colossal Life Sciences is a biotech company, has made pioneering efforts in de-extinction by genetically engineering the living animals to resemble the extinct species. So, their current focus is on reviving the key traits of a woolly mammoth using Asian elephants, which are their closest living relatives. So, in February 2025, the company successfully genetically edited mice embryos to create colossal woolly mice. Colossal woolly mice you can see in the picture with thick, long, woolly hair mimicking mammoth-like traits. So, in this context, we'll look at the key scientific developments with respect to it. Firstly, there was use of CRISPR gene editing technology, where scientists simultaneously edited 7 genes. In mice embryos, and these genes influence the hair texture and fat metabolism, which contribute to cold resistance, which is a crucial trait for the woolly mammoths. But this has faced criticism and also has put in some potential benefits. So why has this faced criticism? So the critics said that de-extinction does not bring back the original species, but just modifies the existing ones. So, and also the ethical concerns over the genetic alterations in the endangered species have been raised. That is why this has been criticized. Whereas if you look at the potential benefits, this could be useful for the conservation and animal agriculture, and also the gene editing technology might help in disease resistance in animals and humans. Okay, so now if you have to talk about the CRISPR gene editing technology, see, CRISPR stands for clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. Clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. So this CRISPR is a gene editing tool. This gene editing tool or genetic engineering tool to edit DNA sequences with precision. Know that it is inspired by the natural immune system of the bacteria, which uses CRISPR associated Cas proteins to cut the viral DNA. So here the most commonly used enzyme is the gene editing is Cas9, which acts as a molecular scissors to cut the DNA at specific locations. Now, how does this CRISPR work? Firstly, the scientists design a guide RNA to matches the target DNA sequence. Then the Cas9 enzyme binds to the guide RNA and cuts the DNA at the desired location. And lastly, the DNA modification is done. How is this done? So after the cut, The cell's repair mechanisms introduce genetic modifications such as gene knockout, which means removing a faulty gene insertion, which means adding a beneficial gene, and lastly gene correction, which means fixing the mutation. So this is how the CRISPR works. Okay. Now, moving on to the next article, it says that the Indian Space Research Organization recently successfully conducted the hot test a semi-cryogenic engine. So going to step a closer to finalizing the crucial cryogenic stage where powering the booster stages of launch vehicles is realized. So scientifically, this test is known as the Powerhead Test Article and the first hardware test for the development of semi-cryogenic engines. So in this context, we'll look at the key features of the semi-cryogenic engines. Firstly, as I said, the scientific term for it is the Powerhead Test Article, where it is the first test focusing on the critical subsystems such as gas generator, turbo pumps, and lastly, pre-burner. Okay. So what are the advantages of this semi-cryogenic propulsion? Firstly, it uses liquid oxygen and kerosene. So what are the benefits of kerosene? It's very easy to store at the room temperature itself, right? And then, as I said, kerosene is easily storable, unlike liquid hydrogen, which requires a storage of minus 250 degrees Celsius. And also, this kerosene and oxygen we are going to provide higher density impulse. They are less toxic and they are also being cost effective to us. Okay. And furthermore, it provides enhanced thrust of 2000 kilonewton, increasing the launch capability. Now, if you have to look at the implications or like the key differences with respect to it, firstly, the semi-cryogenic engine, as I said, the fuel used is liquid oxygen kerosene, whereas here the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen are used. So with respect to storage, as I said, they are very easy to store because the kerosene is storable at room temperatures, whereas for storing the hydrogen we need minus 253 degrees Celsius. And as I said, they have the higher density impulse, whereas the cryogenic engines provide lower impulse, but they have higher efficiency. And with respect to cost, these are more effective. The semi-cryogenic engines, they are more cost effective compared to the cryogenic engines. And lastly, these can be applied, the semi-cryogenic can be applied to heavy lift vehicles, whereas the cryogenic can be applied to high energy emissions. So these are the key differences with respect to the semi-cryogenic and cryogenic engines. Now, moving on to the next article. It says that Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday released the results of the first ever comprehensive population estimate of riverine dolphins, which are nothing but the Gangetic and Indus dolphins in India. In this context, we'll talk about the report first. So, see, talking about the background, it is a first of its kind estimate survey, which was conducted by the Wildlife Institute of India under the Union Ministry of Environment Ministry to access the population of Gangetic and Indus river dolphins. Know that the survey covered the Ganga and Brahmaputra river basins along with the Beas river in Punjab. So looking at the key findings of the survey, firstly the total population stood at 6,334 and the Indus river dolphin population is only 3 individuals found in Beas river of Punjab. So this is with respect to the regional distribution of different regions, and these are the state-wise estimates where you can see the highest are in Uttar Pradesh with 2397 dolphins, whereas the least are in Punjab with 3 dolphins. Just have a look at these estimates or the findings. Now we have something called as the dolphin hotspots and cold spots. So what are the hotspots? Hotspots are those regions which have high population density. So with respect to density, Bihar is the highest, which encounter a rate of 1.62 dolphins per kilometer. And then we have Chausa Manihir stretch, which has 2.20 dolphins per kilometer. Sorry, this is Bihar is the highest. Lastly, Manihari of Bihar in the Rajmahal and Jharkhand, which has 2.75 kilometers per dolphins per kilometer. Now, what are cold spots? Cold spots are those regions which have low or no dolphin presence. So this includes the Ganga region, Brahmaputra region, and the Yamuna, Sharda and Rapti rivers that have poor dolphin presence. Right. Now, what are the legal status with respect to it? See, these dolphins are listed as endangered under the IUCN Red List. Furthermore, they are protected under the Schedule 1 under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, providing them the highest protection. And most importantly, you have to know that this was declared as a National Aquatic Animal of India in the year 2009. And these are the different government initiatives taken with respect to the conservation of the Gangetic and Indus riverine dolphins. Okay. Now moving on to the last article of the day, it says that Niti Ayog said that the countries that develop quantum capabilities will secure an unprecedented strategic edge which can jeopardize national security and economic competitiveness. This was said by Niti Ayog in a very quarterly release on Wednesday. In this context, we'll first talk about the quantum computing, and then we look at the national quantum mission. So, thus quantum computing is nothing but the computing which is a cutting edge technology that uses qubits instead of the classical bits. So this quantum computing, unlike classical computers, leverage superposition and entanglement, enabling exponentially faster processing. So what are these qubits? Unlike classical bits, the qubits can exist in multiple states simultaneously, like 0 and 1 simultaneously. And superposition is something where a qubit can be both 0 and 1 at the same time, increasing the computational power. Then what is entanglement? See, the qubits can be linked regardless of distance, allowing them to faster communication, which means that entanglement. So what about the quantum speedup? Quantum computers solve complex problems much faster than the classical supercomputers. Now what about the National Quantum Mission? So this was launched in 2023 to develop India's quantum computing, cryptography, sensing and communication capabilities over 8 years. Know that it is implemented by the Department of Science and Technology. So these are the key focus areas with respect to quantum computing. Like under quantum quantum computing, which focuses on developing superconducting and photonic qubits, then quantum communication, where securing satellite-based quantum communication over 2000 kilometers. Then we have quantum cryptography, where post-quantum cryptography to protect the cyber security. Then quantum sensing and metrology, and lastly quantum materials and devices. So these are the other missions with respect to the National Quantum Mission, or the similar missions like the National Quantum Mission. Like we have the National Supercomputing Mission for the development of supercomputers, National Mission on Nanoscience and Technology, and India AI Mission for the artificial intelligence. Okay. So in this video we have discussed 10 articles in total. We'll be doing a video every day. So subscribe to our channel to follow our video every day, and join our Telegram for the latest updates like the news click and the daily current affairs notes. So we'll be back again with another video tomorrow. Thank you.